It's the Abingdon and District Model Railway Club ABRAIL 2025. So let's go on and have a look to see what they've got to offer. We begin our adventures with the Royal Albert Bridge in Engage. This is presented by the Basingstoke and North Hants Model Railway Society. The layout was designed to feature the representation of the Royal Albert Bridge that was part of the A Tribute to Brunel layout build by the Basingstoke Bodgers in the final of the inaugural Great Model Railway Challenge broadcast on Channel 5. Except for the plate girder bridge sides, the bridge is totally scratch built from plastic card, plastistruck, microstrip, water pipe, card, paper, and a Pringles tube. The high level main line over the bridge is the Engage, and the lower lines to Oakhampton and on the wharf are to 2mm fine scale standards. The layout is not intended to be an exact replica, just a representation of the area due to the restraints of the baseboard size supplied to them by the challenge. The buildings are a mix of scratch built, some adapted from kits and others from previous cup layouts. The layout is operated over two periods, from 1956 to 1961 with steam-hauled trains, and from 1968 to 1973 with diesels and early BR liveries. An article on the construction of the bridge was featured in March 2019 issue of Railway Modeller magazine.
Can you see a small bridge where the road goes over the railway? And can you see the signal?
Next is Harton Gill in P4 by the Cars Halton and Sutton Model Railway Club. Although everything on the layout should be prototypical for the southern Tyneside area in their chosen time period of the late 1960s, nonetheless Harton Gill is a fictional location. It's always been believed that there is a way to do a model railway, every detail looking as though it belongs, but no need to try and copy a real place. Thus, they have in the foreground an overhead electrified private line connecting the colliery to some imaginary scythes off to the left, just like the real-life Harton Electric Railway. At the back of the layout, they have a British Railways North Eastern Region secondary through line with an occasional passenger service. In the middle is a short passenger line terminating at Halt with a DMU shuttle service, recently electrified with third rail to allow different trains to be run. Wherever possible, the buildings such as the signal box and the footbridge and the signals follow ex-NER prototypes. The timescale allows them to run a mixture of steam and early diesels in both green and blue, as well as the dedicated colliery electrics. The latest additions here are the Tyneside Bobos, electric operating off the third rail. And now to Germany with Königshofen in Engage by Nick Faulkner. Königshofen represents a small German locomotive service depot with facilities for diesels and electric locos. A steam museum now occupies the old turntable and engine shed. The depot is intended to join in with larger modular systems following N-Club International's standards. However, here the main through lines are served by a pair of automated fiddle yards.
What about the loose guys in the trays?
Now we see what we've commonly known as a Class 66 departing with a freight working as it passes the signal box and enters the tunnel underneath the town. As it leaves, we get to have a view of the lovely modelling of the town itself.
But it was on the network. It's just one of those anomalies.
Now some 009 modelling with Angst Lesspork, and this is a rather different layout because it's by Hugh Norwood and it's based on Terry Pratchett's Discworld. There's all sorts to see, various characters, and if you look closely you can see a witch flying on her broom in the background. We take in the sights of the town before a goods train with logs departs. It's very much a Somerset and Dorset themed exhibition this year, as we come to Burnham-on-sea, one of 3 Somerset and Dorset layouts. This one is presented by John Perrott and is in 2mm fine scale. Situated on the Somerset coast, this town once had an importance as the northern terminus of the Somerset and Dorset Railway, which linked the Bristol Channel with the English Channel. The jetty at Burnham received rails from Welsh steelworks to be carried onwards to the expanding rail network in southern England. There was also some coal traffic. Pleasure steamers, i.e. the paddle steamer Waverley, would also call in regular during the summer. The jetty was also used by the lifeboat, which had its own siding. The railway station opened on the 3rd of May 1858. Unusually featured a short overall roof and a long platform for excursion trains. The station closed to normal passenger workings on the 29th of October 1951, excursion traffic continuing to the 8th of September 1962 and closed to goods on the 20th of May 1963. Here we can see a Midland 4F arriving with a short train. It stops on the platform as we get an overview of the goods yard. Our next continental layout is Verneuil-les-vignes, I think. I can never pronounce these things right. It's an N-gauge layout presented by Jonathan Cassidy, and it's set in France in the late 70s to the 1980s. A very tiny little layout of a couple of loops and sidings, and a delightful little charm to look at.
Yeah, I just thought I'd keep it simple. Yeah. Get out of your... No, sorry.
If you recognise this location, there's probably a good reason for it. This is St Ruth in 2mm fine scale by Christopher Colson. St Ruth is built by the Midland Area Group and is a 2mm fine scale terminus to fiddle yard layout set in the mid-1960s and modelled loosely on Penzance. Operation is based on a 24-hour weekday period during September, taken from the relevant timetables but with some adjustments to allow for available stock and track configuration differences. All the buildings are scratch built, and the track is constructed using components obtained from the 2mm scale association. The layout measures 16 foot by 3 foot. So as we look over the layout, we can see a peak departing with an express working, and as we turn back towards the sidings, we can see a Class 22 shunting some wagons. As the 22 moves the brake van out of the way, we look back towards the main line as a Class 121 bobcar arrives with a local service. It's our second Somerset and Dorset layout. This one is Midholme in Engage by Richard Holmes. Midholme is a small fruit station based loosely on the Somerset and Dorset. It is located at the end of the 5 miles single track line from Bath. For the next 32 miles through to Templecombe, the line is twin track. The station has a small goods yard, including a depot for local agricultural suppliers and coal merchant. Traffic on the line comprises a regular passenger service from Bath to Bournemouth and intermediate local services terminating at Templecombe. There is a steady flow of general goods traffic and coal trains serving the Somerset coalfields. Weekends in the summer are very busy, with many special trains for holidaymakers from the north and Midlands travelling through to the south coast. Now we come to Newvaddon Parkway in Engage. It's presented by the Red Roof Model Railway Club. Newvaddon Parkway is set 2 miles to the south of Tolvaddon, a fast-growing town in the heart of the Cornish countryside. It is on the main line between Penzance and the Cornish-Devon border. Penzance is a busy shipping port in which various flows of coal, oil and freightliner containers arrive. Penzance is the terminus for the Great Western Line, which sees a variety of passenger trains. Newvaddon Parkway station is less than a mile south of the old A30, which is currently being upgraded to motorway status, the M30. It is set to become very busy in the future, with land having already been acquired to the south of the station for some shops and extensive park and ride, a joint project between the railway and Cornwall Council. The line gives access to depots, branch lines and goes back to the joint main line at the east of the station. Furthermore, at the west end of the station, another track goes into the Southside Bay platform. All the tracks are linked with crossovers east and west of the station and are protected by colour light signals. Now we're at Broadwell in OO gauge by the Cardiff Model Engineering Society. Broadwell is a recently completed 21-foot by 10-foot fine-scale OO exhibition layout featuring early 1960s BR Western and BR Southern train operation. It is the latest club layout built by the Cardiff Model Engineering Society, based in Heath Park, Cardiff, and continues the club's 50-year history of producing quality OO gauge exhibition layouts. Being new on the circuit, Broadwell has only attended the Cardiff and Bristol model shows up to this point. The depiction of the fictitious Devon-Dorset coastal route covers a broad 10-year span of British Railways ownership between 1955 to 1965. The predominant traffic is BR Western and BR Southern. Steam hold local passenger trains, freights, early diesel classes, all present. The imaginary route departs Exeter St David's following the London South Western Railway line up the bank through Exeter Central before branching off in a south-easterly direction towards the Devon coast. The line skirts the Devon coast until it reaches the newly built through station at Broadwell, which is located just to the west of Lyme Regis. After Broadwell, the line continues eastwards along the coast, joining the existing GW line at Birdpool. As we look over the station, a warship arrives with a passenger service. As it comes to a stand in the platform, it carries out its station duties, whilst in the opposite direction, a BR Standard Class 5 MT arrives with its own passenger working. The 5MT draws in, and the warship is given the road to depart. Carterton, in OO gauge, is by Chris Tuiter. 18 miles west of Oxford lays the small town of Carterton. Founded in 1894 and previously renowned for high-quality tomatoes produced by the smallholders of the village, it is now grown into a town serving the largest RAF station in the United Kingdom. Despite its relatively modern history, most people are surprised to know Carterton used to boast its own railway station. Once a halt on the Fairford branch, Carterton sadly lost its station when all passenger services were withdrawn in 1962. and the branch was finally lifted in the 1970s. This model shows Carterton as it existed in the late 50s and early 60s. A reminder that the Great Western Railway and later Western Regional British Railways was about moving people and wasn't all chocolate box. Now this is a layout I've not seen for some time, but it's good to see it back on the circuit and with a few changes. Oulton TMD in 00 gauge is presented by Alan Cromarty. Oulton TMD is a fictitious location set in the Midlands, utilising locos and rolling stock that typically ran from the early 90s until 1997, the changeover period from British rail sectorisation to privatisation. The layout started live in 2005 and originally consisted of a rail freight distribution maintenance shed with refuelling point and loco stabling point. In 2009, a station area and freight sidings were added, followed by an oil terminal and virtual quarry, which is a ballast yard, in 2010. In 2012, Kibblestone Cement Works was incorporated into the layout, and finally, in 2017, Kibblestone Station and Goods Yard was added. In early 2018, rebranding of the TMD took place, with a change from rail freight distribution to rail express systems. Now, along with the res locos, engineering trains and stock vans that provide interest in the depot, various passenger trains and larger freight trains can be seen operating as well. All this along with sound-fitted locos, hopefully helps capture the sights and sounds of a modern railway scene. Locos and stock are all ready to run. Their liveries range from BR large logo blue up to rail freight triple grey, transrail and load haul, with most classes of loco making an appearance. To add interest, the occasional steam special can be seen and heard. Our final look at Oulton TMD spies a rail freight distribution liveried Class 37 departing from one of the sidings near the station, rounding past the cement works and stopping at the signal next to the fuel terminal. We move to the Cambrian Railways in Llawryglyn in EM gauge by Richard Lloyd-Dole. Llawryglyn is a very small village in the heart of rural mid Wales. In the owner's version of history, it was served by a branch off the real Cambrian Railway branch line that ran from the Cambrian's main line station at Carterton to the lead mines at Van. The model represents the station as Llawryglyn in the years around 1910 to 1912, when the Cambrian, never a well-off concern, was probably at its most successful. Passenger services terminated here, whilst the line continued a further 3/4 mile to another lead mine. And now we come to the best in show winner, and there's no arguments from me about this. This is Bath Green Park in 00 gauge, presented by the Taunton Model Railway Group. Their well-known and popular Bath Green Park model continues to excite both visitors and members with the challenge of operating such a large layout. First conceived in 1997, the actual construction began 2 years later, following considerable research. 2 versions have been built, with the main station yard and engine shed areas being common to both. In the home layout, the Bath Junction area is a fixed section which connects to return loops with auto call-on storage. On the exhibition version, this is replicated in expanded form to enable the full-scale model to be exhibited when away from home, with automated storage sidings behind the main layout and avoiding the need for stock handling. This is achieved with reverse curves beyond the junction, giving an additional track length while reducing the overall footprint of the model by about 4 metres. This allows the model to fit in most venues. Such a comprehensive model requires regular maintenance, and a few years ago was completely rewired. Signalling is illuminated, working and as far as possible fully interlocked with the turnouts. Standalone mini control panels for the Midlands and Southern improve operating flexibility. The home version is regularly operated during the club's open days in support of the West Somerset Railway special events. As we look over the engine sheds, there's plenty of action to be seen. First off, a Black 5 departs with a passenger working back towards Bristol, after coming up the Somerset and Dorset from Bournemouth. In the yard is shunting carried out by a Ginty as it moves cattle wagons. The Ginty remains hard at work as the two locomotives which had brought the express passenger train up are now moved towards the shed. This was in the hands of a West Country, unrebuilt Coombe Martin and a standard 4MT 260. They'll run to the turntable, turn round and be placed on a siding. A little while later, a Patriot arrives at Bath Green Park with an express service. The locomotive will detach and something fresh will be brought off the shed to take the passenger train on towards Bournemouth. With both locomotives now turned round, the West Country and the 4MT move on to a siding by the engine shed. A local stopping service in the hands of Class 2P moves away from Bath Green Park with a short train of 2 carriages. Whilst the 2P heads off in one direction, a Class 2MT Ivet arrives in the other with a stopping service from Temple Combe, terminating at Bath Green Park. The Abingdon and District Model Railway Club's own layout, Leicester Belgrave Road, was on display. This 00 gauge layout is the Great Northern's terminus in Leicester, which was built to cater for more traffic than it ever saw. Here it is shown towards the end of steam before its closure, with a mix of steam and diesel traction, goods and passenger services. A J50 tank engine can be seen shunting in the background as it hauls vans around the yard, whilst at the platforms a Class 25 diesel, or a Type 2, arrives to couple onto some passenger coaches.
Either I have that problem, you see. Just reach it. Alright, just reach.
Still hard at work, the J50 moves the vans towards the storage of the open wagons in the sidings, next to the newly built diesel depot. I couldn't help putting a silent era filter on this shot of an A4 thundering through with coronation coaches. This is Grantham, the streamliner years, presented in 00 gauge by Graham Nicholas. Grantham, the streamliner years, is an exhibition layout depicting the well-known location on the East Coast Main Line in the 1930s. Specifically, the target time span is 1935 to 1939, to allow the iconic streamliner trains to be run. The layout features an extensive collection of pre-war LNER rolling stock, many of the items being specifically built for the layout. This includes a complete collection of Gresley Pacifics, as they were in 1938, based on repaints and renumbering of the standard Hornby products, as well as an extensive collection of kit-built locos. The streamliner trains, Coronation and Silver Jubilee built, West Riding planned, naturally feature, as well as the 1938 Flying Scotsman set and the unique Leeds Quintet dining set. Contrasting with this are the humble, everyday Ellenyard stock, including elderly ex-GNR, the local stock, and the distinctive pre-war iron ore wagons for the high dike traffic, adding greatly to the variety of trains that would have inevitably have been seen at the location. The layout is operated to a daytime schedule based on the summer of 1938 timetable, depicting a representation selection of trains, including all the streamliners, and featuring loco changes, arriving, departing passenger trains from Derby, Nottingham, Leicester, Lincoln and Boston, and goods traffic, all served by the adjacent loco depot. Our final shot is of 2750 Propius, an A3 locomotive, as it draws to a stand at the station, preparing to come off its train and be replaced by a fresh locomotive. It's race day at Plumpton Green as these two services arrive. This P4 layout is presented by Barry and Chris Luck. In the early 1900s, Plumpton was a small settlement between Lewes and Ditchling in East Sussex. In 1843, the railway arrived, passing about 2 miles to the north of the village, when the link between Keymere Junction and Lewes was built by the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. A station was eventually constructed in 1863 and Plumpton Racecourse was opened in 1886, immediately south of the station, which seems to have triggered significant improvements: a new signal cabin with capstan-operated crossing gates and an enlarged goods yard. At either end of the station, lay-by sidings were provided, each around 1,000 feet long, used primarily on race days to accommodate race specials, as we see what's being shunted here. The Keymere Junction to Lewes line remains an important link to London, and much of the 1863 station remains, although the goods yard has long gone. In its heyday, it would have seen race specials, pick-up goods, and the New Haven boat services, as well as stopping and through passenger trains. The model is very closely based on Plumpton, as it was in the period between 1900 to 1914. Inevitably, some compromises have been made, hence the name Plumpton Green. The station limits have been shortened a little, and the lay-by sidings have been truncated, with most of the length on the siding off-seam. The only significant changes that have been made to the facilities are the provision of the up bay to add some operational interest, principally intended for horse boxes, and the connection from a brickworks at the London end. We come to Canada Street in EM Gauge by Carol Johnson. Canada Street aims to recreate a little of the working environment of the numerous small diesel shunting engines once operated by British Railways. Many of these engines spent their working lives on hidden away freight-only branch lines and sidings left from the pre-World War II heyday of rail traffic. As road transport and container boxes gradually took over the distribution of more and more loads in the late 60s and 70s, these branch lines faded into neglect, and most of the engines that worked them had gone for scrap in the late 1970s. Operation of the layout portrays various locations around Britain between 1960 and 1979. The engines and wagons in use seek to accurately model the rolling stock from whichever year and area are being displayed. Many of the shunting engines modelled were found in only a few local areas, so the scenery aims to provide an industrial backdrop, typical of many waterside regions. It's a quick stopover in Farringdon in P4, presented by Rex Davidson. The layout was built by the well-known model maker and author Stephen Williams. It is a scale model of the former GWR branch station at Farringdon in Oxfordshire and is entirely hand-built in 4mm scale P4 gauge. The model depicts the station as it might have appeared during the transition from GWR to BR ownership, during the period 1947 to 1955. we come over to Wimborne in 00 gauge, presented by the Wimborne Railway Society. In 1847, the Southampton and Dorchester Railway opened its line through Wimborne. For a number of years, Wimborne was the busiest station in Dorset. Subsequently, Southampton and Dorchester became part of the LSWR and later the Southern Railway. After nationalisation in 1948, the railway became part of the Southern region of British Railways, and that is what is being shown here today. Now we come to Melton Mowbray North, presented by the Ashford Model Railway Museum. The line through Melton Mowbray was a joint venture between the Great Northern and the London North Western Railway companies operating for traffic in 1879. The Great Northern Railway built the northern part of the line from junctions on the Nottingham to Grantham line, where one branch also ran north to their main line at Newark. The southern part of the line, from Market Harbour to Melton Mowbray, was built by the LNWR as an extension to their line from Rugby. In addition, there was a spur some several miles south of Melton to a terminus at Leicester Belgrave Road. It's a bit funny this, isn't it? Quite a few of these layouts on this show this weekend are all connected. You get the feeling it could be done on purpose. This layout was built as a joint venture. The model was run in two eras. The first is from 1948 to 1953, showing the line as it was with local passenger and freight traffic regularly passing through. However, they also like to imagine what things might have been looked like between 1957 and 1962 had the line come under the supervision of the Midland region of British Railways following the modernisation plan of 1955 and seeing the dawn of the diesel age. Now we go south to Lisworth Bay, an N-gauge layout presented by John Spence. It's a representation of an ex-London and South Western Railway branch, which would have been forged around the 19th century. This branch was originally a terminus, but later on the line was extended to an ordnance depot. The layout, which was Railway of the Month in Railway Model in July 22, is modular, with the main fiddle yard at 90 degrees to the scenic section. The original format featured only the station approach, terminus and main fiddle yard, but has been extended by the addition of two more boards, the first featuring a farm and the second a 60 feet high viaduct over the River Liss. We now move over to Penworth in N-gauge by Mark Butler. Penworth is a Pendonesque, that's the Pendon Museum for those who are not too sure, GWR branch line terminus in N-gauge. The layout has been built to show that similar standards as those seen at the Pendon Museum can also be achieved in 2mm. The buildings are scratch-built copies of buildings on Pendon's Vale scene, but scaled down to 2mm. Penworth features hands-free shunting for added realism. We're off to Wales now with Llanfair Rhyd in 009, presented by Aaron and Nigel Matthews of the Oxfordshire Narrow Gauge Modelers. Llanfair Rhyd depicts the upper terminus of a Festiniog-style narrow gauge railway in North Wales. The time frame has been chosen to be loose to allow running as if a preserved railway or as if it was in the late Victorian times. By the looks of those slate wagons in the yard, I'm going to go with that this is the late Victorian era. As the small England moves from the shed, a mainline Hunset moves round to the front of the slate wagons.
Very good. I don't know what we had in last, can you remember? I don't know, I can't remember. Oh, I think it was fairly intro.
The doctor on top of this is the couplers off that layout. The magnetic uncouplers. Apparently they don't make them anymore. So with the bit you might be starting on like MBM or something.
Oh,
I don't know.
No,
I was thinking DG maybe.
DGs,
but they're good as well.
Okay, thanks.
But before the locomotive can depart, it must await the arrival of the double fairly on a passenger's working.
There's one like that up in this village, yeah.
With the line now clear, the double fairly can come off its coaches and run round to move on to the engine shed and be switched with the small England.
I tell you, the Prim Ranger's got the...
And from Wales to the north of England, we go to Heartburn in EM gauge by Ian Manderson, a study in rural Northumberland tranquillity at the end of steam. Heartburn is a small village in Northumberland. It was never served directly by rail, but lay just north of the old Wansbeck Valley Railway from Morpeth to Reedersmouth, with the nearest station being Angerton. However, the original plan put forward in 1855 to link Morpeth and Rothbury proposed a line via Meldon, Heartburn and Llawryglyn. The proposition predated the Wansbeck Valley. A surveying report was produced by John Willett, but nothing came of the project, and Rothbury was eventually linked to Morpeth by the Northumberland Central Railway that joined the Wansbeck Valley at Scott's Gap. It is therefore based on the plan for the layout on the assumption that the original route was built. The track plan is based on an amalgamation of the 1862 and 1896 layouts of Angerton. The station buildings are based on those at Brinkburn on the NCR. The layout is set around 1962-63, just prior to closure. We make a quick stop at this vibrant-looking layout of Holmeshurst in O gauge, presented by Ian Burford. The passing of the Light Railway Acts in 1896 prompted many proposals for the creation of light railways. Amongst these was the proposal for the development of a new coastal resort to the southwest of the existing town of Winchlesley. Inaugural to the design and promotion of the new development was the provision of a good railway connection to South Eastern Railway at Rye Harbour. The Alsager Railway Association presents Newcastle-by-the in N-gauge. Newcastle-by-the comprises a 4-track line which has dedicated passenger and freight lines. The large railway station is the junction for a single line branch which weaves its way high across the valley on a level with an old castle which overlooks a caravan and camping site situated on the banks of the river. From this site, the road makes its way down into the town, which has a provinical shopping centre and market. At present, a Formula 1 racing car display is being held in the town to coincide with Market Day. The diesel depot above the main line, which is accessed from the branch, ensures that engines can refuel and perform their duties. The locomotives and stock run on the layout represent the modern era on a typical English main line. To the rear of the layout, behind the back scene, there is a 12-road feeder yard to ensure a wide variety of stock can be run in sequence for the benefit of the viewing public. A Colas Class 60 moves along with a fuel train, as in the other direction, an ARC Class 59 with PGA wagons heads towards the station. We now move to Port Washington Terminal Railroad in HO gauge by the Avalon Railroaders. This model of the fictitious Port Washington Terminal Railroad is set in the late steam, early diesel era. The Pacific Northwest and Washington State in particular has long been associated with the logging and paper industries. Longview is on the main north-south rail connection and on the north bank of the Columbia River, which is the largest in the west of the USA. It is the centre of an area rich not only in paper and lumber mills, but also in grain storage and processing for export. Much of the lumber comes from the North Bank area to the west of Longview, and Port Washington was set up about 45 miles west with a rail connection to the main railroad at Longview. The purpose was to tap into the lumber and associated business and to act as an overflow port for the export of grain. Lumber was bought by rail barges from other lumber reloads on the coast and supplies delivered in return. We're at Kingsfield in the 00 gauge by the Barn Hill Model Railway. Unfortunately, when we visited, it ran into some electrical issues, so this is the only moving train I managed to catch. It is a fictitious town, nestling in Oxfordshire, 15 miles west of Oxford. The population of the town is approximately the same as Oxford and has grown in a similar manner over the years. The local commerce comprises of metal fabricators, breweries, timber merchants, and other small to medium-sized industries, so plenty of freight traffic. Here we get an overview of the station with terminating platforms and through platforms. Looks something like a CJ Freezer track plan to me. The boy wanted to film this one, so here's his view of Streeton Way Sidings in O gauge, presented by Richard Bridgman. This is a busy goods yard serving Streeton and the surrounding area. Although fictitious, it's based on the LNER steam era. If you want to see more of this layout, then go check out my Great British Model Railway Exhibition 2024 at Gaydon to see more of it.
You're very good at it. Well done.
When we went to a show once, everybody kept going, they kept taking this off of me. Like, oh, that's a uniform.
Oh, that's a standard, a standard toy for people with three problems. Very nice, thank you.
Now we have Ludlow in Engage by the Liverpool Model Railway Society. The layout is based on Ludlow in Shropshire, which is on the Shrewsbury to Hereford line. It is set in the late 50s to early 60s and depicts both the sidings and the main lines, but also incorporates the line from Clee Hill, which is a quarry line. It is a circular layout with the filler yard concealed under the embankment to the rear of the layout. It took about 2 years to build the basic layout, but like all models, there's always something that you want to improve and add on. The only original parts of the railway left in Ludlow are the main lines, the footbridge and the goods shed, which have now become a local brewery. Dawn Quest was at the show with her 2 layouts, A Brief Encounter and The Ladykillers, both depicting scenes from the famous films. A Brief Encounter is modelled in completely black and white. Everything is painted in a shade of grey. As for the other one, The Ladykillers, well, the very famous house from the film is available from Buggles Kelly Station, I believe, and also features on Jules Holland's layout as well, if I'm not mistaken. Well, it had to appear eventually, especially with Rapido's Titfield Thunderbolt train set coming out last year, and I'm glad it has, because it's a delightful film. This is Titfield Station and film set in 00 gauge, and is presented by the Leamington and Warwick Model Railway Society. It's based on the small branch line in Somerset, which was used for the majority of the filming. The layout itself combines together with some of the features and locations found in the movie, brought together in one place. There's crowds waving from the bridge, the Squires, Bullnose Morris Cowley car, the steamroller, the water tower, and Person Crump's bus.
Very realistic.
We've come to Halden Lane in 00 gauge, presented by Keith Askey of the Uckfield Model Railway Club. Previously owned and operated as Halden Lane by Burnham-on-sea, it has been exhibited successfully at several shows in the southeast in recent years. The layout came into their possession in 2024 and is currently being refurbished and updated. Next is College Halt in 00 gauge. I can hear a Class 20, but I can't see it. It's presented by the Uckfield College Railway Club. And finally, the delightful London Underground-based layout Rossiter Rise in OO gauge, presented by Terry Chu. Rossiter Rise portrays a fictitious through station somewhere in the suburbs of northwest London during the mid to late 1950s. It includes platforms serving LMR 4-rail DC suburban services, LMR branch line trains, and London Underground services. At the front of the layout is a small London Transport depot.
Yes, yeah, oh yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed this video of this wonderful show, and I wasn't expecting it to be so big again this year. It was just as impressive as last year's show. Maybe one for people to keep an eye out for in 2026. But for now, all I can say is that hopefully you've enjoyed this, and if you have, then click the like button. If you want to see more, click the subscribe button, and hopefully I'll see you again sometime soon. Thanks for watching. You know, I've plenty more to choose from. Podcasts, shows, layout builds. Have a look.